If I told you that one of the most successful airline business models globally isn't from Dubai, London, or New York, but from a landlocked nation in East Africa, you probably wouldn't believe me. The airline industry is brutal. Most airlines don't make money, they burn it. High costs, thin margins, constant competition, and when things go wrong, they collapse fast. So how did a landlocked country in East Africa build one of the most successful airline models on the continent? This is the story of Ethiopian Airlines and the blueprint that defies gravity. To understand how unusual this is, you have to understand the problem. Airlines are one of the hardest businesses in the world. They rely on expensive aircraft. They depend on global fuel prices, and they operate in a system where even the biggest players struggle to stay profitable. Over the years, many airlines have failed. Some collapsed under debt, others under mismanagement. And in many countries, national airlines became political projects instead of sustainable businesses. But Ethiopia took a different path. The story begins in 1945. At a time when aviation expertise was concentrated in the West, instead of pretending to know everything, Ethiopia partnered with an American airline, Trans World Airlines. But this wasn't a dependency. It was a strategy. They brought in knowledge, training, systems, and then they did something most countries didn't. They built their own aviation academy. They trained their own pilots, their own engineers, their own technicians, year after year, generation after generation. By the time the foreign experts stepped away, Ethiopia had built something rare, a fully local, highly skilled aviation workforce. They didn't rent expertise, they built it. Then came the strategic move that changed everything. Location. Ethiopia is landlocked. At first glance, that sounds like a disadvantage, but geographically, it sits between Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Instead of trying to compete with global giants head-on, Ethiopian Airlines turned Addis Ababa into a hub, a connecting point between continents. This is known as the hub and spoke model. Passengers don't always fly directly to their final destination. They pass through a central hub, and every connection creates revenue. Flights from Europe to Southern Africa, from Asia to West Africa, from the Middle East to the rest of the continent. Many of them pass through Addis Ababa. You don't always fly to Ethiopia, you fly through it, and that changes everything. But strategy alone isn't enough. Execution matters. In many parts of the world, airlines are influenced heavily by politics. Decisions are made for short-term visibility, not long-term sustainability. Ethiopian Airlines took a different approach. It is state-owned, but it operates with a high degree of professional management. Decisions are driven by business logic, operational discipline, and long-term planning. That separation between ownership and management became one of its greatest strengths. Then came 2020, the moment that tested the entire aviation industry. The pandemic grounded planes across the world. Airports went silent. Airlines faced massive losses. Many had to rely on government bailouts just to survive. But Ethiopian Airlines adapted. Instead of grounding their fleet completely, they converted passenger aircraft into cargo planes. Seats were removed, cabins were reconfigured, and suddenly, they became a critical part of the global supply chain. They transported medical equipment, protective gear, vaccines. While other airlines were shrinking, Ethiopian Airlines was moving, not without challenges, but with speed and strategy. Today, Ethiopian Airlines is the largest airline in Africa, serving more destinations on the continent than any other carrier, with a growing global network and a reputation for operational strength. But the real story isn't just about size, it's about the system they built. The Ethiopian blueprint is surprisingly simple. Invest in people, build local expertise, think long-term, Control the hub, where value flows, and stay disciplined, even when the environment is unpredictable. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about aviation. It's a story about strategy, about how constraints can become advantages, about how a landlocked country can build a global gateway. And maybe the most important lesson is this: innovation doesn't always come from the biggest markets or the richest countries. Sometimes it comes from places the world isn't paying attention to, places that are solving real problems in practical ways. Because if Ethiopia can build a global airline powerhouse from the mountains, what else is possible for Africa and for the world? This is African Blueprints, and this is where strategy lives.